Hello, friends. I am Cassandra Harris-Towner, and today I'm missing my dear friend and co-host, Diana Bernard. As licensed mental health counselors, we're unpacking the quiet, complex griefs that don't come with a funeral because you can't heal what you don't acknowledge. Welcome to the Living Loss Podcast. We're so glad you're joining our conversation as we name these losses and create a meaningful path forward together. Please subscribe and share this episode. It helps us grow this community and reach others who need to know that their grief is valid. Let's dive in. So, as we all know, we talk about quiet losses on this show. And with our guest today, we're looking at living with the grief surrounding both pregnancy loss and baby loss. Today, I'd like to introduce you to our guest a little earlier than usual so that she can join me in this discussion. It is my pleasure to have Shruti Trivedi with me today. Shruti is a certified life and pregnancy loss coach and the founder of Tulsi Heals Life Coaching. She supports women after pregnancy and baby loss, helping them process grief, release guilt, and reconnect who they are beyond their pain. Drawing on her own story of loss and years in a demanding corporate career, Shruti brings both heart and practical tools to her clients so that they feel truly seen, heard, and supported in rebuilding life on their terms. Based in Herndon, Virginia, she is passionate about creating honest conversations around grief, healing, and self-compassion. Welcome, Shruti. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Cassandra, for the kind words of introduction. I'm truly honored to be here with you, chatting with you about this most passionate topic of mine.
I know that you have quite an amazing story to share with us today. So, the first thing that I do want to touch base on is the idea of ambiguous loss. We talk about it pretty frequently. Yet, in this scenario, it can describe loving someone who is never fully known or socially visible, yet deeply bonded with you. Because love can exist without physical presence. So, when we're thinking about ambiguous loss, we're thinking about grief. I am curious as to where your story began, where it's led you to, and how we got here. So, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit of that with us, I'd really appreciate it.
Sure. So, now to start off with, I'm blessed with 3 beautiful children. However, I've also lost 3 babies, and it's that chapter of my life that's been the toughest for me um, to acknowledge, to address, to get help. So with my 3 babies that I lost, my first loss was after my first daughter was born. She was about 1.5 years old. I was expecting again. It was not planned. I was a bit scared at the same time, excited again. Being a mother, motherhood was something I've always embraced. Um, at 9 weeks, that appointment just took a little longer. And there was back and forth between the radiologist and the doctors, and they mentioned there is no heartbeat. I really couldn't understand what that meant. I'm like, okay, maybe you couldn't measure the heartbeat or something. So I was just dismissing it at that time. I didn't um, stress about it. In some time, they said, we need to send you to the OBGYN and you need to just take it from there. So we went to the OBGYN. They took us to my OBGYN took me to a separate room, and she said, Shruti, there is no heartbeat. That means that means the baby is no more and you have to terminate this pregnancy. It was December 31st, 2011. So Year's Eve, and we had actually plans for going to our friend's place for New Year's, and we were going to announce that we are pregnant that evening. So I started rambling. Oh, doctor, you know what? I have to go back home. I have to pack my bags. We're going for a party. So, and she had to shake me up and say, Shruti, there is no heartbeat. You have to terminate this pregnancy today. I was stunned. I didn't know what happened. They gave me some pills. came back home, took the pill, went into labor, and I passed on a red blob in the toilet that I had to flush. And the worst part was also my almost 2-year old watching me crying in pain and screaming while she was expecting for cakes and goodies that I had told her in the morning that we are going for a New Year's party, while my husband is holding her tight. And my hands were shivering to just flush that. And it ended. And I didn't know what happened in my life. I didn't know how to grieve at that point to something that I never got to hold. And like the society also says, I was 27 at the time, so it's okay. You're only 27. You can try again. You already have one kid, right? So you're blessed with one kid. Why not try again? I was blessed again to in a few years. My middle daughter was born, and then it kind of felt like okay, kind of move on, kind of thing. That I didn't even. I'll be honest. I used to just ignore myself. Whenever such feelings creep up to me, like, okay, I'm just stupid. I would just call myself stupid at that time. A few years later, back in 2017, I was expecting identical twin boys, and they had a few complications from the beginning, but they would have a complication, and the following appointment they would be fine. Like because they were identical twins, the ultrasound would sometimes act up. So we were always like, okay, uh, we'll be fine. And one thing is also identical twin boys. I would say specifically, it's something on my father's side. It's my grandfather was an identical twin. Um, we have my father's cousin is an identical twin, and we have kind of a tradition in my father's side of identical twins. So in my generation, when my family got to know, they were like, "Oh, you are going to take this tradition forward." So I was super excited that I'm going to take that. So at 18 weeks, they were diagnosed with TTTS, which is twin to twin transfusion syndrome, and that led me to do a laser surgery at Johns Hopkins. The surgery was successful. There was a slight membrane tear, but the surgeon was one of the best surgeons in the world. So I was very blessed to get him operate on me. He said it should be fine. There's a 0.1% chance that something could happen, and that's the category I fell into. Where in 19 weeks, my water broke, and yet again, I was told to terminate the pregnancy. That it was a risk on my own life. Uh, I remember that conversation, the radiologist saying, "No, you have to terminate or you're going to die." And I said, "What are the chances again?" And he said, "It's like 0.0001% chance." And I said, "I'll take that chance." And I came back home on full bed rest. And I was making progress, surprisingly. So I was like, okay, now, this hurdle is over. Now my babies are going to make it. At 23 weeks, it was my eldest daughter's 7th birthday. That morning, she came up to me and said, "Mama, you're on bed rest. I just want you to enjoy. So I'm going to decorate your room and we're going to cut my birthday cake over here." That afternoon, I developed a fever. I went into labor and I delivered my boys. They lived for under 2 hours. It's what the doctor said, that their heart is beating. I got to hold them all night on my chest right here. It was the most peaceful night, yet the most heartbreaking night. Um, where I was hearing some cries from other rooms, my room was full of silence. And again, I never talked about it. I just went quiet. I used to have my own breakdowns. I was again fortunate to have another baby boy the following year. And it was a nice way of convincing myself, the society telling me and myself, your two boys are back as one life, which is a very nice thing to say, it sounds very serene. At the same time, my pain was not lessening. I was getting busy as a mother, but I was still feeling a lot of pain inside. And that's what took me another 5 years to finally get the help. And when I said yes to therapy, and that's where my transformation began. And that's one of the reasons why I'm speaking to you about my journey, because it took the longest time. It took more than 11 years to address and allow myself to feel what I'm feeling. So that's my story.
Thank you for that honest recap of something that I can't imagine is easy to relive. And one of the things I want to touch on is definitely how to support someone that's going through this, because this is truly one of the most sincere versions of disenfranchised grief that I could think of in this moment. It's that grief that isn't fully recognized or validated socially. You said that people just told you, stay strong, move on, you're young, all of these different things. It was early, you can try again. And I'm curious how that impacted you in those moments. How did you process that? What did you do with that?
So, unfortunately, most of the people that say these things are your near and dear ones. So, to feel frustrated, to feel so painful at the same time, this person loves you a lot, is, I cannot even describe that feeling. It's very painful. It's painful, adding more pain to whatever you're going through. Like, you want to tell them, can you please stop talking? Can you not say this? Can you just get out of here? I don't want to talk. And that's where over time, I kind of categorized these three different sets of people, or categories of people, I would say. The first category, who would just come up to, as a supporter, you would come up and just give these long lectures or motivational videos and um, send those things. A grieving mother doesn't need it. The second category is this: move on, time will heal, be strong, don't cry in front of kids. You have to be that rock solid mom, kind of, who throw these one liners. And then this third category of people who go quiet, because again, they are scared to hurt, so they don't speak a word. They just lose touch completely. They just don't want to bother you with anything. I would say a bereaved mother doesn't need either of these three. I remember my sister sitting in my room, not saying a word, just sitting there with me. She would sometimes just sit, look here and there, and leave and play with my kids. I had another friend doing the same thing, just come in, sit for an hour. I would be looking at the walls. She would be looking at the walls and just leave. And I don't know what it was. I still don't know how to describe that, but that was powerful. Just that quiet silence. I knew there was somebody in the room. Even having simple check-ins, like I had some friends just saying, if you ever want to talk, I'm here. Simple. So that helped me more than the these advices, that you already have three. I know how I had been told at one point, you already have three kids. Why care about the other three? That hurt me so much. They probably didn't mean those words, but it came out in that way. And they were like, you need to be grateful for what you have. People go through worse. I know this other person went through 7 miscarriages and they don't even have kids. You at least have 3. that doesn't lessen pain. And I realized grief cannot be compared like that.
Mhm.
You cannot compare my pain to somebody else's pain, or my pain saying that somebody else only had one miscarriage, so telling that person she had three and you had only one. No, any kind of loss at any point is a loss and is painful. Be it one day, 1 second. I truly believe the first second of conception is where life began.
You also touched on the delayed grief that you felt, where later on down the road, you were finally able to start to process it. It sounds like it took you close to, if my math was right, about 15 years
11.
before 11. My math was not right. Roughly 11 years to actually start to be willing to delve into this grief, the delayed grief where the emotional impact surfaces months or even years later, often when it's triggered. So those bouts that you were feeling where you would just sit and cry sometimes, or you would struggle in doing daily tasks, it's not necessarily because you don't wanna do those things, but avoidance, numbness, and intensity are all adaptive responses, they're not failures, but it was just you adapting to and processing your grief. So can you take us a little bit into what that was like for you dealing with that delayed grief?
Yeah. So after my first loss, it there I used the only thing I used to primarily do is celebrate the due date. Or like I used to have one piece of candy, but have these random um, times where I used to look at somebody who was born in spring or summer. So my due date was July 28, 2012. So if I heard somebody was born in 2012, I would look at that child and say, my baby would be that big today or that old today. And I used to feel uncomfortable. I know I had a very near and dear friend whose child was born in uh, to 2012, and I used to look at her and I'm like, I have my feelings so uncomfortable. And I had my middle daughter. She used to actually go to their place. So, like, why is that uncomfortable feeling still there within me? And later on, I realized that was just thinking, why can I not have that child as well? I should have my middle daughter who was born in 2014, but I should still have my other child at 2012. So that was that took me a long time to realize. After my twins, like I said, two boys back as one life, two souls back as one life was a great way to kind of close that chapter is what people expect. But every year around the same day, it all started with the Memorial Day weekend through the end of June is when I delivered my babies. I used to get panic attacks. I used to get random breakdowns in between meetings where I'm doing a presentation to a director and I know I have another one. I'm feeling this thing as if I'm going to vomit. I remember this specific meeting where I felt like I was a host in a conference room presenting and I felt like I was going to throw up. And I'm like, what did I eat? I had regular breakfast and I could not understand. And then I was like, okay, after this meeting, I know I have another one, but I'll rush to the bathroom. And I rushed into the toilet and I just cried. And I'm like, what is happening? I had to throw up. I was full in that position to throw up in the toilet. And I cried and I couldn't understand. And I was like, Shruti, are you crazy? What is going wrong with you? You have a presentation. You have to prep for this. So I came outside. I quickly put on some makeup. I kind of and rushed back and escaped through it. And this continued to happen multiple times where I was sitting, doing something, working on a pending task, and suddenly there will be tears rolling down. And I'm like, what is happening? Why am I crying? And I would not understand. So it took me a very long time to understand that those were maybe the signs of maybe heading into depression or something that I was only escaping through. Like randomly, whenever these feelings came, I would always bathroom was my place of rushing and just wiping everything off, not even letting myself cry. So those were the emotions during that time, and I escaped every single time. Never even talked to anybody, never told anyone that this is happening to me. I don't know what's happening to me. It was only when my company at that time, back in 21, I got to know that my company was offering complimentary therapy sessions, and 8 complimentary sessions. I was like, you know what? Let me just give it a try. Let me talk to a therapist and see. I was very negative with that. Like, I don't know what I'm going to tell the therapist. Like, I'll tell her 5 years back, I had a loss. And then I was not even considering the earlier loss at that time. I'm like, 5 years ago, I had a loss. I don't know. I still feel uneasy, but I have 3 kids, I have a job, I have everything, and I still feel it. And what is the therapist going to really even tell me at that time? Like, she's going to say, you have everything, Shruti, you just want to create problems in life, is what I thought she was going to say. On the contrary, she was shocked to realize that I had ignored my mental health for so long. And that's where the transformation began. Like, okay, I needed that validation from her at that point. Like, okay, so whatever this is normal, is okay, is valid. Because we keep talking about validation, right? As part of, and like, we don't need validation from others. You should believe in yourself. But at that point in my life, I needed that validation from her that yes, whatever you're feeling, every feeling is okay to feel. That's what created this beautiful space for me to then go into therapy and do all those sessions where we did comprehensive assessments, exercises, and it was like a lot hidden within me that I didn't even know, that was stored inside of me, that came out, and we I learned a healthy way of dealing with my own emotions.
It's amazing how transformative it can be when someone just holds space for you and allows you to feel what you need to feel and express what you need to express and validate what you need to hear validated.
Absolutely. That's so much needed because it's I'd say the society is just designed in a certain way that they just dismiss um, pregnancy loss as a loss.
Mhm.
Grief is a broader term where we're all going to experience grief at some point. We are con- we have experienced it. We're going to continue to experience it, and we all have our own end dates at some point. However, when it comes to pregnancy loss, in my experience, the baby not being considered as a human is the most painful part about it, because it's only a week old. It was only 5 weeks. Oh, it was the baby never developed a heartbeat, so um, you know, just dismissing it casually, or it was a stillbirth. So yeah, the baby never lived, but it was human. The baby existed the first second, like I said, the life began at that moment, and it needs to be respected that way. You cannot dismiss it. And that's the awareness that I want to bring, that for mothers, that's the support we need to create, that kind of an environment for women who have experienced loss. Allow them to feel what they're feeling. Don't ask them to just move on. The best phrase I've learned is, instead of moving on, you can move forward. So now I move forward with my 6 children. And it's up to every individual how they want to even introduce themselves. But I know some people do. Like, in my case, example I can give is, I have 6 children, 3 in my arms and 3 in heaven. And that makes it really beautiful, that I'm not leaving them behind. I'm moving forward with them.
I don't want to assume that there's guilt and shame and self blame narratives involved in this, but I would imagine that there would have to be because we take things so personally and we make things so much about ourselves and what we did. How do you help a grieving mother that's dealing with that?
Absolutely. The guilt part, I would say I know in one of my therapy sessions, I'd taken intentionally a red marker and written down, I killed my babies. And from there to me writing down in the next couple of sessions that I did everything to protect my babies was the transformation I experienced. And so for me, it just became a life mission to pass it forward and um, create that space. So the way I have created is I have created a framework which I call is a 3 A's framework: acknowledge, allow, align. I work with this framework where acknowledging what you're feeling and not dismissing it. Acknowledge and give it time, whatever feelings are coming through. So the thing is, when you're feeling like when I was crying in between meetings, I used to just put on makeup and come out of it. But I used to not allow myself to feel it. That's where the next step of the framework comes. If I feel like crying, I need to cry. I need to allow myself to cry. And I think creating that is very important where you let the person cry, do whatever is needed at that moment. And then align is more on the honoring side where you can cry, but then if you don't take that next step, then then you don't know how to handle your emotions. So it could be as simple as journaling, or it could be for as simple as just even doing something to honor the babies, even taking their names. If you have not named the baby, like I'm actually thinking about naming my earlier loss that I had at 9 weeks because my boys were named.
Mhm.
My earlier loss, I didn't even know whether it was a boy or a girl. So how do you name a child? So those were so many different thoughts that came, but I'm like, I will name something so that I can take that name. So I think Align falls in more into that honoring space where you you honor, you do something meaningful, even go looking at the pictures or ultrasound pictures if you don't have pictures. So that makes it so meaningful. The entire framework is something I have um, created, and I want to create that space for mothers like me who have ignored and are still probably there, have not even taken help. And I want to help those mothers um, who who have been told to shove your feelings inside, not talk about it. It's a hush hush thing. You don't talk about pregnancy loss. You don't talk about um, mental health or therapy because that's again a huge taboo and stigma getting therapy. Physical health is all normal. I can say, hey, Cassandra, I cannot record today. I have a fever.
Mhm.
But when it comes to therapy, I would be hesitant to say, you know what, maybe I have a bank appointment and try to skip this. So I have done that personally when I was taking therapy initially. So I know that feeling, how hesitant and um, taboo I had. Like, what are people going to think? What will people think? That question is so annoying, I would say, but we overthink about it by default. So that's the space I'm creating for women, for bereaved moms. Here you can come, allow yourself to feel everything, and honor your babies, and this is a space judgment free, unfiltered, where you can just allow to be yourself. And for me, my lived experience is what makes me more relate maybe relate to the pain, how another bereaved mother is feeling, and so I feel blessed doing this work. And for me, I would say it gives me more meaning and purpose. That even if I have one person, it's impactful and honors my own pregnancy loss. So it's huge for me. It's meaningful work for me. and I want to do this the rest of my life.
Thank you. Thank you for your service to these people who the world might pass by otherwise. To these women that have to live in silence and grieve in silence, thank you for what you're doing with them and for them.
Thank you so much, Cassandra.
Is there something specific that you want to make sure that's heard today? Because I have all sorts of other questions we can get into, but I want to make sure that if you have a specific message that you want to share, that you want to make sure that is heard out loud, louder than anything else, what would that be?
Sure. So one of them is you don't have to move on. And I already spoke about it briefly. You don't have to move on from your babies to heal. You're allowed to carry love and grief together and still build a life that feels soft, honest, and meaningful again. And also, nothing is wrong with you when you're feeling really low. Your grief is not the problem. So just be compassionate with yourself. Just be curious as well. What is going on? Sometimes we are not curious, like what's going on in our soul. That's something I would like to leave. And my favorite phrase I would like to close out with is self care is not being selfish. So we
Yeah.
always, as women, I think we wouldn't focus on self care. And if we do something for ourselves, we'll take it how selfish I am. But it's not. Self love is extremely important to take care of others. The best example I give is in an airplane, as part of the safety procedure, they say, put on your mask first before helping others. And that's the best example. It's very standard. You hear it every time you fly on a plane. But when you try to see a deep meaning out of it, is you need to take care of yourself to be a better person for others. So take care of yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing those, what we would consider living loss lessons with us. Because all the loss that you've lived with have brought you to the point where you can share those. They're tangible takeaways that people can use right now. And they're not about fixing a pain, but they're about finding a way to carry it. And so sometimes, like you did, you gave us tools to practice, or reflecting on meaning that people have built from a loss that they've never asked for. And this is also representative of the strength that you've gained. So, something that I'd like to touch on for my own takeaway from this living loss lesson is that grief reflects attachment, not duration. There's no right timeline for healing. And I feel like that's a very, very important message for everyone to have, because it can apply to so many different areas of loss and grief, and feeling like I should be over this, I should be done with this, but it just keeps going. So, Shruti, I'd like to thank you today for being with us. I'd like to thank you to our listeners for being part of our circle. Just remember, friends, that by sharing this episode, you're helping us reach someone else who's carrying their loss in silence. Let's keep growing this community. Subscribe, follow, and share, and know that your story matters. Additionally, there's a number of ways to connect with Shruti, and all of those shall be listed below in our show notes. And just as a reminder, this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes. And while we are therapists, we're not your therapists. So this does not replace professional mental health care. If you feel like you'd like to speak to someone, please reach out to someone near you. And again, Shruti, thank you so, so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much, Cassandra, for inviting me. I'm super blessed to share my story and um, just make this impact. It's like I said, my life mission now.
It sounds like you're taking amazing steps forward to touching as many people as you possibly can.
Thank you.
Thank you.